I'm Terry Rhodes, Vice President at AAC&U. Welcome to our Next Generation Assessment Series. As we know, a key driver in recent years for institutional assessment of learning has been reaffirmation of institutional accreditation. Today, our hosts Tammy Cummings and David Miller talk with Judith Eaton, the immediate past president of the Council on Higher Education Accreditation. That organization recognizes institutional and programmatic accrediting organizations and entities. And this will be a prelude to a series of additional interviews that we have recently had with the leaders of each of the regional accrediting bodies. So we welcome you to this focus on accreditation.
Hi, I'm David Miller from the University of Florida, and I'm one of the co-hosts today. I'm a professor in research and evaluation methods and also the school director for the School of Human Development and Organizational Studies and Education. And today we're talking about the topic of next generation assessment from the accreditor's perspective.
Hi everyone, I'm Tammy Cumming. I'm the Associate Provost and Assistant Vice President for Institutional Effectiveness at Brooklyn College of the City University of New York. And it's such an honor to introduce our guest, Dr. Judith Eaton.
Hi, I'm Judith Eaton. I'm the President Emeritus of the Council for Higher Education Accreditation, a national coordinating body for accreditation in the United States based in Washington, D.C.
Awful glad to have you with us today. And today we're going to talk about changes in assessment and accreditation. And we were wondering if we could get your perspective on, since the advent of the COVID-19, what are some of the changes in assessment and accreditation that you've seen?
Thank you. And again, I appreciate being with you today. First, I always try to be careful in talking about assessment. That's because it means different things to different people. Some people are talking about a process, some people are talking about a framework, some people are talking about evidence of learning. And let me mention that to talk about assessment and accreditation, we can look at either what accreditors do or what institutions and the programs they accredit do. I'll focus for a few minutes on what accreditors do, on accreditation practice. Flatly, when COVID-19 really hit all of us back this past early spring, accrediting organizations had to do what institutions and programs had to do, and that is go online. And they did that quickly, and they did that well. What this meant is self-study activity had to be online, so-called site visits had to be online, the meetings of decision-making commissions and councils had to be online as well. This raised a number of issues. If you were going to look at a campus or a program virtually, what kind of reliable, let me stress reliable evidence can you collect? What isn't reliable if you're examining a campus virtually? For example, can you really get a sense of campus culture when visiting a site virtually? On the other hand, other kinds of evidence, for example, all the reporting that institutions and programs are required to do, it's pretty straightforward. It's what's been going on anyhow in accreditation for a long time. So accreditors were able to move the process expeditiously and effectively. The one area of greatest concern and strain, and it's still with us, is how do accreditors look at clinical or laboratory or field work that is required to obtain a degree or credential. And accreditors who look at these various activities had an additional constraint. As you know, clinical laboratory field experiences are pretty much focused on the licensed professions. That means the accreditors work closely with various licensing boards in states throughout the country, and the requirements of those boards themselves in order to grant a license in, for example, one of the many health professions varied considerably. So there is still ongoing adjustment in that area. I was talking to a chief academic officer just the other day from a college, and she was describing the differences between two professional fields in the health sphere in this regard.
You know, it's incredible what we've seen, as you mentioned, how everyone, the universities, the colleges, the accreditors themselves have pulled together to move everything to a remote environment. You bring up some really good points, Judith, regarding reliability and, quite honestly, validity as well. And it makes me think, as we're moving forward in this new education environment, it seems like the assessment of the learning outcomes are probably still, if not even more relevant than before, to exactly as you mentioned in these programs like the health professions where the clinical experiences are difficult to deliver the instruction. We still need to make sure that we deliver on the promise of what the students are there for their education and make sure that those student outcomes are met. What do you see moving forward with respect to accreditation changes there, or, you know, the continued requirement for assessing the student learning outcomes?
Tammy, I think this is at the heart of the issue. First, with all the changes with the whole industry, higher education profession, if industry bothers people, going online, much of the judgment and attention of the public, media, students, this past spring was on, how do you do it? How do you do it well? There wasn't a whole lot of attention to evidence of learning or quality. I don't think that can last. I think as we're moving into this fall, the attention is going to return to accountability for learning. I have long been a proponent of accreditation doing more and more in this area to focus more intently on evidence of learning in making judgments about accredited status. So 3 things. And I mention my longstanding advocacy in this area because what I'm about to say isn't new. We just need to keep focusing on it and do it. First, more and better data. We've heard a lot about data about learning, making progress toward learning, the use of new technology, artificial intelligence, examining what's going on in the classroom for some time. Most recently, a lot of the focus has been on using data in a more effective way to address inequity in higher education and how we produce better results for everybody. So acquiring more and using data to a greater extent for a variety of purpose. Second, making evidence of learning central to accreditation judgments. All of the accreditors have a lot of standards. Those standards always include, of course, attention to student learning and what students know and can do. How do we focus on that even more intently going forward? And that's especially important in this environment because there's so many questions about not so much the efficacy of online learning, but am I getting the experience that I wanted to get? So making evidence of learning even more central. And then we have, I think, a public responsibility or responsibility to the public, putting that evidence of learning up front, having it available clearly, succinctly, easy to find, in informing the public about the foundation for accredited status. Those are 3 things I think we need to be focusing on. And a number of people have said this, we are going to be called to account for the quality of learning this time around to a far greater extent as we all move forward. We may be doing this for a good number of additional months.
Thank you. That's very interesting. And I like your positions on this. I think this is a fascinating notion that first we had to sort of change and learn how to do the things we were already doing well. And I think that's been done in a lot of places. I know that we're continuing also. I think you're right that there's a lot of challenges left out there, though. I know that as a chair of a department that includes psychology, the idea of field experiences and clinical practice are still a major issue for us of how we're going to be able to do that in a COVID environment. But I'm particularly excited to hear you pushing the idea of learning. I know that's something that has been pushed a bit before COVID, but I think we're going to have lots of new and different ways of thinking about how to measure and get good data for that kind of experience, data that's reliable, that's valid, and as you say, that addresses the issues of equity. So I think that this is a very exciting direction that you're pushing us in. So I want to thank you for coming on and talking to us today.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, everyone.